Yeah.
Hi there, welcome to the Atlanta Film Festival Creative Conference. My name's Craig Zobel. I'm a director at Atlanta Film Festival alumni, and I'm here with my friend and director of photography, Darran Tiernan. Welcome, Darran.
Hi, Craig. How's it going? I'm Darran Tiernan. I'm a cinematographer. I've got an accent. But we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, and Darran, we've worked together on, I don't know, several years worth of projects, multiple projects together.
We have done, yeah, probably 7 years since we first met. Yeah. And so, we've done it. We've spent a lot of time with each other, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, well, I mean, to just jump in, like, do you want to tell your background of how you got into making film?
Yeah, sure. I went to film school in the early 90s in Dublin, Ireland, and it was a brilliant film school, and it's exactly where I needed to be at that particular point in my life. When I finished up at film school, I started a company with a couple of fellow students. We shot commercials and music videos and things like that, and that's how I kind of started professionally working as a DP, because everybody had a different job. There was an editor, a director, art director. And then I got the opportunity to shoot a commercial in London with some other film students as well that kind of signed to a commercial company. And myself and Robbie Ryan, who's another Irish cinematographer, really great one, moved to London together at the same time. We kind of worked together. He would operate and I would light, and then I would operate and light on different projects. And it started from there. And I lived in London, worked in London for 15 years. And then I moved to Los Angeles, and I've been there for 10 years. Yeah.
Did you go to, like, in school, were you like I actually don't know the answer to this. Like, were you always like, I'm going to be a DP?
Yeah, I really was. I think I watched, like, I always loved films when I was little, but my dad had a VCR, which was, in the early 80s, was like mind blowing to have a VCR in your house in Ireland. And the only place you could rent videos from was like the corner store, and the guy had like 6 videotapes, and one of the videotapes was Blade Runner, and that kind of was I remember that being the spark. And and then in my earlier teenage years, just being very interested in photography. My dad had a Super 8 camera, etc. And so when I went to film school, I really, really wanted to be a DP, and that was it. I had very little interest in being a director or anything else, and which was great, because then I ended up shooting everybody else's stuff, because they were like, "Oh, you're that guy that does that," So yeah, that was, I like, from an early age, I really knew that's what I wanted to do. Like, I'd say when I fully realized, it was about 16 or 17. Yeah.
Me fully realized you wanted to be a DP. Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Yeah.
What a nerd.
Like, yeah, you said it.
It's so true though. It's like, and like, I think when I told my parents, they were just like, well, what's that? And they didn't really understand it. And it wasn't until years later, I think, when I was shooting a show early, when I'd moved to the US, and my parents were actually visiting, that they came on set and they were like, "Oh, that's what you do."
Right.
And this is like only 10 years ago. So it's like, for the longest time, they were probably scratching their heads going, okay, well, he seems to be okay and he's not dead. So, so it's like, so, and I like that there's a laissez-faire kind of attitude from them about what I do, that it's not that important, which is cool, but they're quite proud of certain things I've done that they love. That was kind of, so it's fun, but for the longest time they had no clue what I was doing. It's probably true of most people that work in the film business, who parents don't know what the film business is like.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. And you started young as well, like, Where did you go to? You went to film school
I went
too,
to
no?
the North Carolina School of the Arts in Winston.
Yeah.
And it was like a conservatory, so it was pretty small.
Mhm.
And I was in a class with the director David Gordon Green was kind of there when I was there. Danny McBride, Jody Hill,
Yeah.
Jeff Nichols.
Wow,
It's a fun
quite a
group of
group.
people. Yeah, it was. Well, we were
Yeah.
like in the middle of nowhere. Winston-Salem was like not particularly cool, and so like you kind of just had to go to school. The one rule was that you had to watch 5 movies a week, and they had like 3 theaters in the school, and they had prints. It was like they have like one of the biggest collections of prints like around, 35 millimeter
That's
print.
incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because I got to see. I mean, we would just go to that every day because there was truly nothing else to do in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing though, to be forced to watch movies. Like,
I mean, it's kind of how you
this is
learn.
what I have to do. Yeah.
Yeah, do
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, I think I'd say 50%, even though I went to film school, I'd say 50% of my learning has been from watching movies and then deconstructing them later,
Yeah,
and
right.
discussing them, and it's just I'm still kind of blown away by things that I haven't seen, which is that are really interesting. But did you go to film, or you went to the conservatory to be a director, or you weren't really
Yeah,
sure,
kind
or?
of. I wasn't really sure. I mean, yeah, I thought I would be a writer and a director, and then I like when I got out of school, I just was I also got fascinated with producing, and sort of I double majored, if you will, in that kind of. Um,
Mhm.
like the physical, like true, like line producing type, production managing, like that kind of stuff. And so I
Yeah.
did that for David Gordon Green's first couple movies. Like I helped him with that, and like I got interested in that because I hadn't, like I didn't direct. So well, I oddly did direct a movie like right out of school. That was a kind of a crazy project in Florida, but I realized that I knew how to kind of do the producing part, and so that was kind of what how I was first made myself useful. And
Yes. Yeah.
you know,
And I bet you learned a lot from that, because line producing is actually quite creative as well, because you're trying to make all the money work for the
right, you're like, well, we
project.
don't
So
have enough money for
you
that,
know,
but what if this happened?
yeah, and that is creative, even if people feel like it's not. It really is, and
Yeah,
sometimes the results are better than the original intentions. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And then I moved up to New York, and had worked with some people in the South, and I like moved up to New York uh to see what I could do. And like basically I couldn't like really transfer straight to being a unit production manager in New York because I just didn't know I mean, it's a different town, and it's like, they're like, do you know how to
Yeah.
negotiate with like Teamsters? And I'm like, no. So
No.
they were like, well, you do have all the skill set to be a non-union second AD. And so I was that for a while, and then I was a first non-union
Right.
first AD, and I was about to join the union on a Michael Showalter movie, and I was like, I don't want to be an AD, I don't think.
Yeah.
And I'd been
Hmm.
trying to write like this movie for 100 years, based on my dad had been had done this crazy job where he was like an A&R man for a record company, and it was the movie that ended up being Great World of Sound.
Yes. Yeah.
I've been waiting, kind of trying to figure out how to do it, and at the same time, my Atlanta buddies, Mike and Matt Chapman, I'd helped them with Homestar Runner, their website that we kind of all made up together back in the late 90s. And I just was like, well, I'm gonna try my damnedest to, I don't want to be an AD anymore, I'm gonna try and make that movie. And so like that was the first kind of
Yeah.
yeah thing. And then
That's a great film.
I worked
Yeah.
in like indie movies for a while. The way we met each other was like I worked in indie movies I made several 3 or 4 movies, but at some point had gotten like I just started getting TV work, which kind of happened like at a time period when I feel like that was still not what most people were doing yet. I worked on
No, it was very much just before it kind of just blew up. Yeah. And yeah, because you were on Leftovers.
Yeah, season 2 of The Leftovers, and then season 3.
And we met on American Gods on
Right.
season 1, which was great, actually. American Gods season 1 had a very kind of tricky start. And I think, you know, as most new shows do, you know, when they're brand new and everybody's trying to figure out what the world's going to be. But we had, yeah, I think we got on straight away. And
100%, yeah.
You know, and saw in each other kind of, I definitely think we still have this as well. It's that we still have a hunger to do really interesting things. No matter how tired we are, or you know how many times we've probably talked about a particular thing, I think we're still kind of motivated by that. And we had a fantastic episode on American Gods because it was like a standalone, and about one particular character who was Laura in American Gods. So that was really interesting. Yeah, it was really interesting. And of course,
yeah, because we got to kind of like not being like everybody. I remember people asking me like, do they tell you like how to shoot it when you like direct like TV? And I was like, no, but like maybe they do. We just never, I didn't have that because it was always like I did that. That was like my episodes of like Westworld, that was later. My episodes of like Leftovers were like pretty weird and kind of standalone episodes. And then when we hung out, it was like, oh, let's make this it was, you know, it was like a sort of a bottle. It was an expensive episode, but it was like the structure was that of a bottle episode kind of.
That's true, yeah.
Standalone.
Which actually was, in a lot of ways, you know, some people get scared of bottle episodes. But the thing is, like in our case, it was like a chance to explore one of the major characters' kind of backstory and then where she was now, which was great because it was like a little mini movie.
Yeah.
You know, and Emily Browning was fantastic. So, you know, well, actually, the whole cast of that show were great. And that was really interesting. It was like, that was when it really just started, you started to see much more and more interesting shows, like, you know, 2016, 2017. And there, you know, therefore the years after, people have been saying, oh, it was the golden age of TV, you know, or the second golden age, whatever, because the streaming service is really kind of pushing that forward. And the ambition is like pretty high. It still is, I think, you know, and, you know, it was kind of at fever pitch, probably just before the pandemic. But, you know, people are constantly trying to invent new things that people are going to get like really into, you know, so.
Yeah.
And then a year later, we got to do Westworld, which was exciting because we were shooting on film, and yet again a standalone episode.
Right.
You know, within
the
world.
Guy who did standalone episodes of TV.
Yeah. I was always happy about that, like, because I was on Westworld for half of it, so I shot 5 episodes. But our episode together, which is Shogun World, really was just a kind of marvelous thing because although we were living in you know, our kind of, you know, to adapt to the rules of Westworld, we were kind of shooting something that was outside of Westworld, which was really interesting. Yeah. And you had, you know, Shakespeare in Japanese to contend with, which was pretty crazy.
Directing an episode of directing in a language that you don't speak is weird. Especially if it wasn't even actually Japanese. It was like it was like the Japanese, like from, you know, like like you said, like Shakespearean kind of like a period Japanese accent. So I would be like, that's great, and they'd be like, no, he didn't say any of those words.
He didn't say it properly. Say it again.
But it was fun, like in terms of, I remember, you know, one of the cool things in even just starting with American Gods was like, it was like, well, how do we photographically be inside this one? It's like a story about a woman who was like pretty like lonely and and kind of introverted or whatever, and like it was like, how do we photographically show that? And we like started playing around with putting wide lenses like kind of right next to people's faces, like there,
yeah,
and it was like, oh, that feels like you're in their thoughts, kind of. It felt like,
and Emily was quite responsive to that as well, because I remember it was always like where she was weighing up a situation and what her decision was going to be next, and those shots really worked for her.
Yeah,
like it just let's go inside her head and just observe her for a few seconds, and then she does something else, and it was, as American Gods was, it was quite, the storyline is pretty crazy at times.
bonkers, but
bonkers. But here we are, just going, okay, well, how do we do that? How do we do this? And like, I think one of the first things I really enjoyed about working with you was actually just really kind of exploring the script. Like, and we've had this ever since, is that before we do anything, we just sit down and we go through the script together.
Right.
And it's like bit by bit, piece by piece, what that word means, where they're situated. And then you have a blueprint of sorts to start the kind of visualization of the project, which I really enjoyed that with us. Like, it's a very specific way. And we do get into, especially on what we're working on right now, we got into deep specifics in our prep. So
and we
there's a Bible of
although we probably can't say too much, we're both in New York doing the Penguin for HBO Max at the moment, and or just Max, I guess it's called now. They changed
Max in DC, I guess. Now it's called Max, isn't it? In May, new name. So we can't talk about those specifics, but of course.
But we did, it is, and it's been I remember just being like, oh, this guy's cool, because we would like, there was a whole thing, the character in American Gods is supposed to be like, she's like, it's a fantasy thing, so she was like, back from the dead and could kind of see the person that brought her back to life, the love of her life, like, and had this special like vision. And we like did experiment pretty quickly, like with like how do we make that look cool? Like, what are we gonna do? Like
Laura vision.
What is Laura vision?
Laura vision. Well, what is it? Yeah.
Which ended up,
and then it was like
the back, you like being like, what if we take the infrared protection off of the camera and do this this like weird other thing, like, which looked awesome, and it was just like, oh, okay. But the fact that we were immediately,
it was very cool. And then using particular lights, and that language is like how she does see, and it doesn't matter where she is, but the love of her life is a shining light,
Right.
And we had like a massive light behind him with infrared gel on it, and it was just like, I think we even shot stuff in daytime as well with it, which was weird as well. Like that was really exciting, because also, at the time, like, digital cameras were only out, like, those type of digital cameras, cinematography cameras, were only out about 4 or 5 years, so
it felt
we
like
were
we were like
all
making a rule,
learning.
for sure. Like it was like, we took the weird things, we like broke it.
I do remember ringing up the rental company, and they were going, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I said, "Well, can we give it a go?" And they gave us. We had an older red camera that they took it apart, because the show was shot on a ARRI-Lexus, but that was a lot of fun. It's kind of, because you can do amazing things on film cameras. There's so many cool little tricks because it's analog. With digital cameras, it's usually left down to the posts, but there is still things you can do in a digital camera which are kind of interesting that you can't even do on a film camera, So, we've done that over and over again. It's like, I'd really like to try this for this. So I would like to try that.
Well, I remember like when we did Westworld, it was like, oh, we get to establish this new world, and like, I don't remember why the conversation started, but Jonah Nolan, one of the two showrunners, Jonah Nolan and Lisa Joy, was like, he was like, maybe it can be anamorphic,
Yeah.
Why it was, I don't remember what the like logic for that was, but at the
Well,
time
I
it was
think it
great.
was yeah, I think the rule was if you're watching a projection, like of somebody's mind or a memory, it would be an anamorphic. So
That's
when
right.
Anthony Hopkins, who had been killed in season one, turns up in Jeffrey Wright's consciousness, it
Right,
was all anamorphic
right.
because he's actually a program that's playing in his head. And it was like, that was the rule, and then it looks so cool. And I think, Jonah was always at the forefront of, shoot on film.
Right.
And, he protected that very well. But one of the things about Westworld is that you had to shoot Super 35 3 perf to save some money because anamorphic, you go to 4 perf and
Yeah.
then everything's 25% more expensive, and they shoot a lot of film. But that became a really nice device, like a visual device, I thought,
Yeah, no. Oh, I just remember that it made us get to like test a bunch of stuff again. And I remember us like getting like every weird old like 1968 Kawa lens from someplace and just being like, put that
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
You
I
know,
still have those tests somewhere on a hard
they're
drive. They
good.
were
Yeah.
cool because we had a geisha girl and loads of fabrics and different colors. Yeah, there was something in that actually we must probably go back to someday and find it again and just go, hey, this is what we should do.
I just remember being like, wow, what if you just shot an entire movie on these two weird, like old 1960s lenses? Like, that looks like a mess,
Yeah,
but we're cool, you
absolutely.
know?
Yeah, yeah, they were very
Um,
cool. Yeah,
yeah,
and we were lucky enough to work on shows that you went to produce and say, I have this crazy idea. Can I try it? And they'd
people
be
be like,
like,
okay,
yeah, go ahead. Let's see what happens. So,
right, right.
and I think things like
It
that
should
when
be
you're
said
doing
that we didn't
testing,
shoot on those Kowa lenses at
unfortunately
the
not,
end of the day,
you know.
but if we got to play with them,
Yeah,
and that was pretty cool.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's like sometimes, what's right's right and what isn't. You know what I mean? And it's like every like especially television films, more so in television because there's so many people involved in the creative process that there's a lot more conversations, I think. Um, so it's actually really enjoyable to have those creative conversations because it feels like it's an open place to speak in and nobody's saying no. So which
Right,
I think is that's really important to me. I'm never like when the first answer is no. It's like, no, hang on.
right.
Let's have a look at this properly. Yeah, and
And it
so like
was just
within a
also, it's
year,
like
yeah.
it is like a matter of like how much that stuff can really change the look of something is pretty, and change the mood of like, you are still making photographs like
Yeah,
that.
importantly we're trying to find what's correct for the mood in a scene, because I know, and maybe this is a chance for us just to talk about our process a little bit, is like from the script, we always use the script first, and I know for a fact that sometimes we go off in tangents that might last half a day, which is totally fine. I think when if you have the time and prep, um, but you always come back to the script as your kind of tightrope to walk, um, but I do enjoy that process, and then like the visualization, like one thing I was thinking about that we quite often do is that we don't never really start with, have you seen that movie? Have you seen that scene in that movie? Or it's usually with photographs. Like we always kind of bombard each other with a bunch of images. This feels right for this. This feels right with what do you think of this? And then when we kind of, shake it out and find the gold in it, then maybe we bring up movies. But then
Or
I
it's
think
like
we
stills
also,
of movies is the second step. It's like stills of
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a
photographers,
lot of stills, and then
and then
and
stills
then
from
when we
like
do our
film grabber
scouts,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, film grab, and there's so many good ones actually. What's the other one? It was
Yeah.
shop bank and stuff like that. But they then that process of actually going with those kind of images in your head and going to an actual location or visualizing a set, like that's the next step. And then we're pretty good at shot listing, I have to say. I
Yeah,
think
for
yeah.
sure. I think that what's funny. So yeah, like I mean, we shot lists at, I mean, on this show we've shot listed almost everything. Um,
Yeah,
Like,
and a mixture of just a basic shot list, which, you know, overheads is another thing, storyboards
which
the
to
odd
explain
time.
that, like, it's like we like get
Mm,
a drawing of the location, and then I use Illustrator and I put little like people in it and cameras, like to be like, we think the camera should go there and there and there, and um
yeah,
super useful in
yeah.
planning your day, because you're like, oh, we're looking in that direction first and then that direction or whatever. And
And
then
absolutely, and it helps everybody else on the team understand what you're trying to achieve as well. You know, it's like your operators, and your gaffer, and your key grip from my departments. You know, for sure, your first AD, we must to try and understand what you're trying to achieve, um, and um, and then we do photo boarding, which is like one of the best tools that we can use. Which is, I guess anybody who wants to be a filmmaker should get Artemis Pro. I'm not advertising it, but they really should, because you got every camera system in there, every type of lens, and it allows you to pretty much visualize what you want to do, you
yeah,
know. Yeah. And
yeah.
all on your phone, which is pretty impressive. And it does
There's also
video
one
as
called
well if you need to
Outrage,
do
which
that.
is maybe a little cheaper for people who are
Yeah.
but it is like it's dialed in. So basically the idea is that it's like where the camera is where the film plane would be on a camera.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. So where your sensor is on a digital camera and film playing on a film camera. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, right. Your sense.
Um, and
You can
you
pick
know, we get
like Alexa LF, like open gate to
mhm.
239 to 1, and then you're like, whatever, airy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's very impressive because even it has like everything, you know, from your Sony A7s to three 3/4 micro lenses, you know, so it doesn't matter what camera system you have or what you want to shoot on, it's all there, which is great. So then we generally get some stand-ins or members of the crew and go to the locations and kind of plot out what we want to shoot, which is also a good kind of pre-editing tool as well, because you kind of see, oh well, do I really need that shot? Not really. You know, it just makes it everything to be a bit more efficient.
and also
And
sometimes in the way of like for editing, just in terms of being like, that's a cool shot, but it's so wide. It's like just looking at them here, like that's never going to cut to that one, or these are so similar that maybe like we need to rethink that part, because it's like those shots they're gonna be kind of clunky like together. You can just see it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like having that plan is so useful to us on set when we're under time pressure as usual.
But
And
the funny
you
thing
know,
is, like,
you
half the
yeah,
time we use it and half the time we drop some of them or change it. I mean, the truth of the matter is that after a while, a movie or a TV show tells you how to make it. And so like
hmm
pretty quickly you're like, oh, that was the plan, and prep was to like do this with these over the shoulders. But like, man, we love it when, and these close-ups. I mean, on the right before we got on, like I was just telling you like that, like I'm in the edit room today, and like just
yeah,
looking around and being like, oh man, like we got to use more of the like 145 lens, because it just like pops and is different, so all of a sudden this movie starts
yeah,
telling you how to make it, and when the movie starts telling you how to
yeah.
make it, then you kind of don't need that plan as much, but
No,
the
no,
fact that
and
you
that
had
like
it is great.
yeah, absolutely. Because if you have a plan, at least you can throw it out and start again because you've already had a thought process about it. And like, and then of course, you know, to mention that, you know, we've been lucky enough to work with lots of great operators, and they bring so much to the table as well. But operators in general, especially the ones we've worked with, when they see that we came to the table with a plan, it's great for them because then they feel like they have freedom to move around that, and rather than being scratching their heads wondering what we want to do, you know.
Yeah.
And it makes for they also it's good for the crew as well because they know that we just came with a plan and we don't want to work for 18 hours in the day. You
Right.
know,
Like
it's
we're
like
not gonna just like drill everyone into the ground. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No, it's good for a bunch of reasons to be prepared. It's also it's
Absolutely.
good
Yeah.
because like sometimes it's like it makes you think of like things about, what I find is always a fascinating thing is that like we think up like the writer, and especially when you aren't the writer, like has thought of it in a certain way, and then like we kind of stand there and we're like, well, why would they walk over there? And so there's like another layer of like realness put into it slightly, because you're like, well, that wouldn't they kind of, if they came into the house, wouldn't they go over there first? Like the screenplay says
Yeah,
that they go to the kitchen, but like wouldn't they have to walk over, whatever, I can't think of a good example, but that there's like a layer of realism that kind of gets added just by virtue of the fact that you like are having to put it on its feet. And then after you've done that, the actors show up, and it's like there's a whole other layer of like,
yeah,
which sometimes is, my character wouldn't do that type stuff, but sometimes it's which I'm, is a little, I'm a little less impressed by that comment sometimes, because you're like, well, maybe your character does. But like
yeah.
when you're like when it's more like my instinct in the scene while we're blocking it is to like look at him when he says that thing, then that's like makes it more real if you actually shoot it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which then makes us be like,
Absolutely.
oh, like yesterday, we were shooting yesterday, and it was like, oh, we need 2 more shots. Like we need these 2
Yeah.
other shots that like we didn't
Yeah,
think.
because the actors had brought something else to the scene that we didn't foresee. They were giving each other, they're sitting beside each other, but they keep looking at each other because they're making a play. And yeah, it was like before we finished, it was like, no, we need those shots or else the story's not complete,
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's like a way
yeah,
better story if you just get that stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Which is fun. That's what is great about making movies, is that it's a constantly evolving thing.
Yeah. You really don't know. You have expectations when you turn up for your day, but you really don't know how the day's going to play out. And you get those, like, my thing is like happy accidents. I just love when that happens. Like I think the other day we were shooting very simple thing where a car is driving up to a house, for example, and one of the camera assistants left the camera on the ground, and the camera was going inside the car to do a shot, but they left it on the ground while they were helping do something else. And then we were both standing there, and I said, "We have to do this shot." And you were
That's
like, "Yeah, we do. We did." And it was like, and it was a cool shot, but it was a complete accident that somebody left the camera down and it was pointed in the right direction, and it just looked right, for the
right.
scene. And things happen like that all the time, whether an actor does something on you didn't see they were going to do, or you know, um,
What's the difference?
it's
I don't know
it's
that everybody that happens all the time. I think that you have to like be comfortable enough that you're not breaking your, and I
yeah.
think some people, especially some directors, like can be very scared that like it's like, but people won't think I'm smart if I didn't think it up like ahead of time that way. But it's like, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. It's a cool shot.
It
Just
really
get
does.
it.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter because I think if you're putting the work in anyway to make something the best thing it can be, and that kind of synchronicity or serendipity happens, because you're already in that place that I'm a little bit uncomfortable here. I'm not sure if it's going to work, and then it does because you actually took a risk because you took a chance.
Yeah, right.
Um, yeah, and it's
I feel like that a
and
lot. Yeah, like
yeah,
just like,
me too. Me too. And I think that's why we get on so well. It's like, I know you and I could just turn up with a script and have let's say somebody said you need to make something tomorrow. I think you and I could actually turn up and figure it out on our feet rather than have to plan it. And that's like experience of working with each other, one thing. But the other thing is just being comfortable enough to go, sure, let's see what the actors do and walk around the set, with your viewfinder in your phone. Like that's quite often what I do when you're rehearsing.
right.
And I come back with a bunch of stuff and say, "What do you think of this?" And you can say yay or nay. It's totally
Yeah,
fine.
and sometimes
But it's
it's like
just
you've
like,
got the whole, you like, it's like I'm like, yeah, that is the, when sometimes it's like uh we like one shot, and then we're like, oh well, then if we're gonna do that one, then we have to like do all these other shots that are different. But at least, yeah, it is.
yes,
You know
yeah,
what you bring up is a funny thing, is like we haven't talked about this very much, but we also give each other rules. Like the Hunt had a lot of rules. $1, the CBS All Access, and the Paramount Plus show had a lot of rules. Like we gave ourselves like rules on every episode of that because we shot 10 episodes in a row. And
Yeah,
like
yeah. A
those,
lot of fun rules,
yeah, that was like the most playing.
especially on $1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like the for, and we have a lot of rules on this, and the rules kind of keep you inside of tonally inside of something when you're,
Yeah.
you know,
And
like
that's important.
with
You
the
know,
hunt it was like
yeah.
it always has to, camera always has to be moving. That was the rule of the hunt. I remember it was like it's got to look poppy and like modern. I remember
Yeah.
it has to be colorful and
Yeah.
modern and
realistic looking, like very realistic. It was like as if you just turned up and you were in this place. Yeah. Yeah.
and then the camera always
And
has to be moving.
yeah, and I think the realism in it is really strong because the storyline of satire and crazy things happening therefore you kind of believe what's happening a lot more, which I loved about it, you know.
Right.
Like I think if we had went for a very, you know, aggressive look and a very stylistic way of doing it, I don't think the film would have the same impact, you know.
We also
And I
didn't
remember,
have very long. Sometimes we were on longer things, but it was more of a while because it's funnier. I mean, like it was
yeah,
like a slightly wider
yeah,
lens.
yeah,
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 yeah. But
wider
then
and closer, yeah.
wider and closer. Yeah. Where
Yeah, and
like this one,
also
I'm
like
like,
also the giving Betty Gilpin the time to just act in the frame, you know, is like
yeah,
do her thing as well, and you know, which she, you know, I'm pretty sure you could cut like 5 different movies of um all her different types of styles of acting, which was incredible to watch, you know.
yeah.
And it was interesting because I have to say like I love working with you from you being a director, like, and the way you work with the actors, because it's always interesting and fun, and you know they feel safe with you, which is really important. And I don't want to say too much, but only today I was down on set for a minute to talk to some of the crew, and I spoke to one of our actors, um and I, you know, we were saying waxing lyrical about how you find the right tone and point and then join it all together later. You know what I mean? And she has been told by a friend of hers who you have worked with extensively, you know, that they had this discussion as well, which I thought was brilliant. That, you know, so
That's nice. That's awesome.
no, it's awesome. Like, you know, it doesn't happen all the time, you know. So you know,
Well,
it just
but
like
it's a funny, yeah, because it's like it's all part of the same. It's all part of the same thing, I guess. Like when the movie starts telling you how to make it.
make it. Yeah, yeah. And you know, if somebody comes in with an idea that's a bit too, it's outside of that, then it's like, well, that doesn't work because, you know, the film is telling you how it's got to be made now. You know,
Although you did
especially
yell at me the
we're
other day.
6 weeks in, are we?
Yeah,
What's that? Sorry.
you did yell at me the other day when I said something was weird.
I didn't yell.
You didn't yell. You didn't yell.
No, I think it's sometimes. Well,
I mean, that's
I have to
the good push
I
and
have to
pull
be
is that
reeled
it
in
needs, you need
sometimes,
to
as
keep
you
pushing me to
know.
be
You
weird.
know? Exactly. I have to be reeled in. I know I do, because I will like, but like I don't. Oh, I hope I don't like throw too many things in all day
No,
long.
it's
But there's
awesome. I mean,
sometimes
it's
I'm
what it
just
needs
like,
to be. It's still photographs. We're making photographs, you know, so they have to,
yeah, yeah,
like, it
yeah,
still is most important that it look good. But I do, I mean,
yeah.
going back to,
And you do listen to me when I do say, well, if we do this, it's going to be a problem because of this, that, and the other. You know, for whatever reason. And it's great that you do listen to me, and we do always find the best way to do something. And I think it's vice versa, that I listen to you when you say, hey, that won't work because of this, you know.
yeah,
And half of filmmaking is getting rid of the things that you shouldn't do on top of the things that you should do, you know.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
I feel like the times that we, yeah, like that, well, you are very generous about asking what part of the shot do you think you'd use in the edit, or like when do you think
yeah,
you'd cut into this shot, which is actually something that like people that is a layer of communication that I don't think that directors and cinematographers like. I mean, I feel like it's not intuitive to think that you need to kind of be talking about it that way all the time, because unless you're doing the, the Coen brothers, like, we're shooting this shot just for the like business that happens inside of this shot, for him picking up the phone and turning around, and we're not going to run. Most of the time you run the whole shot for a while, so all of a sudden you can get into a scenario where you're like shooting something and it's like, oh, but that's not why we chose to put the camera here, not because of that part of the shot. So like, if it doesn't work for that, then just like pan the camera off or whatever. That's not why we're there. It's also a good time to say we almost always shoot with two cameras.
Yes, we do. We generally, like, one of the I think both cameras are as important as each other, but obviously we do kind of like, we do a lot of, like, I think we're very respectful to B camera, because sometimes, they're just like there to service A camera. I don't think they are on most of our shoots. I think we've been very specific. Like, A camera, obviously, in a traditional sense, is the one that's going to be on the first 1, 2, 3 actors, and usually setting up the main shot of the scene. But you can give B camera a lot of freedom and say, hey, you can find something over here or here, and they always find something great. But and also, what I love, what we do is a lot of leapfrogging, whereas we've set up A camera in one specific thing to do one specific thing, and B camera's over there waiting to do its part, and then A camera's setting up the next thing. So even though we do use two cameras all the time, probably 40% of the time we're like leapfrogging them. So it's like having two A cameras that are on a single camera shoot. And yeah, I do find it really important to ask those questions about, where do you think the shot starts and where does it end? Because sometimes shots don't, like, if they're, it does several things at the same time, it can be quite complicated to set up. And then maybe you're wasting some of the energy in that particular angle, when you could be in a different angle that's going to tell the story better.
Right.
So I think that's why I asked that a lot,
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, and I think that that's just always, it's like, you can light for the part of the shot that you will use, or to be really specific. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, it's going to go dark there. And if we wanted it to not go dark there, then we have to either not shoot the other camera right now, or we have to like pull all of that stuff, even as much as like we have to move all of the carts over. You know what I mean? And there's sometimes where it's like, well, that isn't a way I want to spend the next half hour of the shoot day. So let's do
absolutely this. Yeah. Maximizing your time, is very important. And I like to try and work at a click, so you have as enough time with the actors as you think you need.
Do more than a take.
Because like, at the end of the day, if the acting and the writing and the directing isn't right, it doesn't matter how well it looks. It's always kind of not. It's always never going to be cohesive. So, and that's like, I like to be in a position where you have as much time as you can, which is the best part of it, is when it's live and you're actually shooting and you're watching these wonderful people who decided to be actors doing their thing.
Doing the hardest part of the job,
they are doing the hardest. It's like, you're so exposed as an actor, So for them to feel that we know what we're doing and we have a plan is so important, So and it's like, we've been.
That goes back to like, and how do you make sure?
No, go ahead.
Oh, that goes into the like thought, but just going again back to making up rules is like, after like, I feel like you don't really know what they all are at the time. Like, I think on the Penguin, I think we kind of have the lenses from the film. We use the lenses from the film and made a choice about that. And like
Mhm.
that has really driven a lot of the conversation. But at the same time, that, you know, the theory being, well, we were doing a television show and it didn't have the, I mean, I think that, I don't know what the budget of the movie was, over $100 million.
Mhm.
You know, like that, it isn't the same scope, just naturally it's not gonna be. So it was like, well, at times we want to be inside of the Batman world, but that it's also about a different character, and he's kind of down on
Yeah,
his
which
feet,
has its own set of rules,
and so he
because the
needs to have,
Batman, yeah, and if they're like the Batman is a fantastic kind of example of a film that has great rules for its story.
right,
This is a man who lives by night, and dresses up as a bat and fights crime. And like most of the time, he would be around the nighttime, whereas the Penguin's a completely different character.
right,
He's a criminal. This is a gangster story, criminal. He's a very busy criminal. He's a lot of things going on. So he works day and night, and like that brought up very interesting conversations because, well, the Batman is pretty much just 2 or 3 scenes in daylight. Whereas our show, also within the constraints of it being a TV show, not a major motion picture as well, is like, we want to we want to honor the Batman, but we also want to extend this universe
to do
that we
different,
find ourselves in. Yeah. And now I feel like after several weeks of shooting that we are, like, as you said before, it's telling us how to be made, well, we've done that scene and that, this is not, it's similar, but these are kind of like, it's similar kind of emotions going on and a similar kind of, piece going on. And it's been really interesting because, and, uh, you know, all encompassing at times because we're at some, like every day pretty much, I think on this show, we've been somewhere where it's brand new set or
right,
we're now shooting this for the first time, so you on top of we have to make our day, we have to get all the words out, the actors have to do their business, whatever. It's on top of that we're exploring things that we just landed in,
right,
and I had a lot of conjecture about beforehand, so
right,
um and thank God we have a plan. So,
right, right.
yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Though right now, if somebody like burnt all our shot lists and destroyed hard drives, we just couldn't access them, I wouldn't feel
Oh yeah,
scared.
we're like in it
You know,
now. We know what we're doing now.
yeah, we're totally in it.
Right.
Yeah. So it's interesting to be having this conversation while we're really in the middle of it,
It is.
of a project,
I
Yeah.
mean, going back
Yeah.
to $1, like why that one was fun was that it was like we
That
just,
was the best one. It
yeah,
was
it was like,
really
I
good.
mean,
Yeah.
first off, we were tried to make it look like a, very specific photography, like it has a very
Yeah.
aggressive look to it, shooting in Pittsburgh, but um
Yeah.
in a cool way. But it was also like, okay, let's try to, like, I remember, I mean, that started with me being like, I want to do zooms like Robert Altman, where you zoom in,
Yeah.
you zoom back out, and then you zoom over here, which
And
we
you
kind of
find
started
something
doing.
else. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we like, at some point we were like delirious and we're just like, what if we do, I remember that
Yeah.
the day that we were going to shoot an episode that was mostly about kids, and we were like, what if we make sure that the camera's never higher than the main character's head? The like,
Yeah. And
just
she was 4'3", I think, wasn't she? Yeah.
so it was like the
It was
camera had to
brilliant.
stay 4'3" for an entire
Yeah.
episode or two. Like, does anyone know? I think I think you unconsciously feel it a little, maybe not, but like
Yeah.
it's kind of.
I've had one person say to me they realized that we were doing different things on every episode, and in particular the kids one. And they said it only clicked on the kids one because, like, for 6 episodes beforehand, when you filmed an adults, you were like, most of the time you were at their eye level. But then suddenly in this episode, anytime there was an adult, you're looking up at them, and like in a kind of Charlie Brown type of way, it's like the adults were nearly like it was more important to be at the eye level of the children than it was the adults in this episode, and actually worked really nicely.
Yeah,
And then there was another episode we only used 3 lenses,
that was the lenses that
a
weren't part of the
wide, medium,
original.
long.
Well,
Yeah,
wasn't it? It was the one that,
torturing our poor operators and
yeah,
torturing them.
it was the lenses that didn't come standard with the kit, is what I remember it being.
That's right. They were
The very,
outside of
very,
the
very
50
wide
millimeter.
one.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
macro, the 60 millimeter macro one, and then the like, I think the very,
190 or something
very
like that,
long
and 200
one.
mil, I think. Yeah.
Right.
And interestingly, because when we did that, I asked you not to tell Jane was editing, I think, and I asked you not to tell Jane anything about it and tell it and to let her know what it was like to edit. Didn't she say it cut together like really easily?
Yeah, because it was like, it was always going to be one of those three lenses. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like snap, snap, snap. Yeah, all the parts click together. Yeah, that was so much fun that we could do that, and nobody was stopping us.
Yeah. Right.
But
Right.
yeah,
Just
it was
because
very
like
fun.
no one saw that TV show, but that's
Yeah,
fine.
go out and
But
see it, everybody. It's really good.
that was just definitely like having a rule, just to like, I mean, and those were almost arbitrary in that way, but I feel like since then we've gotten a little bit more like defined about it, and between that and
Yeah,
like looking at pictures and being like, make it look like a, whatever, a Frederick Wiseman documentary or something.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. I think like yeah, every project that we've done, it's been a different bunch of photographers, which is kind of cool. Um, and even still, then finding images that have nothing to do with anybody else, or you don't even know who the photographer is. And sometimes one simple image is everything you're trying to do, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I think we're both aware of one of the reasons, and I don't know, we don't probably never talked about this, but one of the reasons for me personally why I don't usually use films as references is that I don't really want to be influenced by it. Because, and I've told you this before, I find it very difficult. I never watch any other TV shows when I'm shooting a TV show because I just don't really want to be influenced by it, because I think we're on a separate travel, um I do, I do get inspired by movies all the time and TV shows, but not to copy them or emulate them. It's like, I think between the creative people that you're working with and the script and the actors that you're going to have and the environment that you're shooting in, you can really kind of be doing your own thing outside of being influenced by a lot of other things. And I know we haven't talked about that a lot, but I think we both do that. Like,
yeah, I don't, yeah,
we don't let it in. It's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna copy a shot from The Crown tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's like, that's one of my fears, is that I'll see something amazing and then feel that I'm not doing my best, like at my
right, yeah,
own
it's like a
on my own
self-preservation.
project. Yeah, yeah, self-preservation. And
Yeah, totally.
yeah, it's like I'm just trying to find my own way here without anybody telling me stuff, which is great. And obviously from a technical point of view, there's always things that we've tried and we want to do, and because we've seen it somewhere
Yeah, I
else,
mean, I feel like
we hear it about it. But that's
there's been
different
things
because
that I've
that's a
tried to copy.
technique rather than, yeah,
Yeah, like there's been, I mean, in Z for Zechariah, which we didn't do together, but like I very actively stole a shot from Tarkovsky's Stalker. I like made the person have the same wardrobe. I like stole it. Like I was like trying
yeah.
to do that. You know what I mean?
You were inspired by it.
I was inspired. Well,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, there's that
yeah,
old Jim Jarmusch quote that I'm going to butcher, but the one that's like, basically like steal it. Essentially, the instinct, the root of the quote is him being like, steal anything from anybody that you want, because by the time it like goes through like your process and comes back out, it's not going to look like that anyway. So
absolutely, yeah,
fully
yeah,
believe
yeah.
fully believe that's the
Yeah,
case.
I totally do. It's like, although I've talked about this man too much, but David Bowie, for example, is like one of the greatest magpies in history. He took a little bit for that and did a little bit, and then surrounded himself with all these bits and pieces, and then made his own thing, which ultimately was very individual and creative. So yeah, I subscribe to Jim Jarmusch as well. It's like, no matter what you do, through all the layers that you have to go through to get to that point, you're going to create something different. And it's, you're with different people, the weather is different, you're in a different environment, but like the seed is there of what you're trying to achieve, So
and
yeah,
hopefully you're like
yeah.
taking the right reason to be in, I mean, I feel like it's always, for me, it's like, well, it's like, why that, like, why are you, why does that feel good for this? Because then that helps you get to a bigger rule. It makes you make a rule.
Yeah, it makes you make a rule, and rules are good. Like they're really good. It's like some of the performances on what we're doing now. I know some of the actors have rules for themselves and what they do in their performance, and it works. Works really well because they've explored it and they've now executing it really well, and it's just like, yeah, and I think we're doing the same thing. It's and actually, I love the fact that you during this process can go to the edit room, discover things that are really, like inspiring you through what we've just done a week ago, and say, we need more of this, because that's really important,
It's
as
been
we
a
go
fascinating,
grow forward.
yeah, because it's scary, because then you look at it and you're like, because every time you first see something, it's like too long and stuff is in the wrong place or whatever. Like, it's just natural that it's like
an assembly. Yeah.
Iterative nature of editing is that, like, you have to have more than one go at it, but
Yeah.
I'm not doing it so that I can be like, we really need this one shot of this one thing to make that all work the way that I saw it in my head. Mostly I'm not walking away thinking that, as much as I'm like, oh, you know what? It's like, this one lens is cool. We should do that more or whatever.
Yeah. Because it's speaking to you with the actor doing the performance with that lens. It's like, this makes sense. Yeah. And we actually, we are shooting anamorphic on this, so the range is smaller than usual. And sometimes not having a huge choice is a great thing, I think, as well. Because, sometimes it's just too convenient to put a lens on and get everything into the shot. It's like, and it feels convenient, therefore forced and not realistic, for me personally anyway. It's like, yeah, it's and should we talk about the hunt for a minute, because that was the only feature we've done together actually so far. That was a very exciting thing for me, because I felt like, well, we did 10 episode show together, all the episodes, and then we'd cut our teeth in American Gods and Westworld together, which were pretty ambitious shows anyway. The Hunt, I was excited because here's a feature film where, we're not, once you're on a feature film, the rules are different, because, there's not a whole showrunner production, TV setup, which is fine. I'm happy to work within those constraints, but on a film it's different, and we're telling one story rather than trying to interconnect 8 to 10 stories. But I remember we were very studious about like planning everything, and we did really involved days of photo boarding and everything. And I think we also had to do it because we didn't have as many days as we probably would have liked to shoot the film as well. And we wanted it to go smooth, and it did. It was actually so much fun, that film. Like, I there wasn't a day on it that I was ever concerned or exhausted. Even to be exhausted was not to be exhausted. It was like, I can keep pushing myself here. This is great fun.
Yeah, we had enough prep that there was like, everything had a little like, but then we get to do that inside of that scene, or like that we had found a little like special thing too. I mean, man, the hunt for me was just like, it was the first time that, like, I just felt like I came from indie movies, which the hunt technically, well, I mean, it's a studio, but it was a smaller, like, not a ginormous movie, but like that I to get to move the camera around and to like do that type of film grammar, like it was like a thing. It's like I liked watching active actiony movies, but to make it's a different muscle to like start to use. And I mean, certainly with Westworld and stuff, we had been doing it, but just in a different way. But like it was fun to like that final fight scene was a blast to do. You know, it was like
yeah. And all the rehearsals were amazing because I think we actually video boarded a lot of the rehearsals, and the stunt team were amazing as well with, Heidi and Hank, and they were brilliant at video and their fights themselves. So we had all this to draw upon.
cool.
And then it was really inventive because it was like, well, what if you added this part to, the fight, or could you do this? Because it's
Well,
a
yeah, I
long
remember
fight
we
scene.
would be like, we would be out in, it started with like, because we knew sort of we had to build that space because we were going to mess it up. And so like Matt Munn and I would be out in the, world looking at some other location for some reason and see one of those like pass through fireplaces. And I'd be like, it'd be cool if like somebody kicked somebody through a pass through fireplace as one of the beats.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
I'd call Hank Amos and be like, hey, what about this? So we were kind of making it up
yeah.
basically while we were doing it. And then Hank and Heidi Moneymaker, who are all Atlanta people now, they
Oh, cool.
they did that first kind of concept of it based on all of the, like my friend Maeve made these like macrame like
Yeah,
viral things.
yeah,
So I was like, maybe she can swing on one of those and fall, or like, so we had kind of these like get them there and there and there, and the general shape of the room would be kind of like this, and then like, they came back to Matt Munn, the production designer, and we're like, what if it had this outside thing so that we could do this? It was very
yeah.
collaborative.
Go through the sliding doors. It really was, and I remember all our conversations. Like Matt be with his the drawings of them. We're going, well, actually, if there was a corridor there, that would work better for a shot. Can you give me a 5-foot fence around it, so because it's on stage, so we can sell it as being part of the house? And also, actually, one of the things about it was that the fight starts at dawn.
Right.
Betty Hilton's character arrives at the house before the sun's come up, and throughout the whole fight, the sun is coming up. So that was a good head scratcher for me. It was like, okay, what time are we in the fight? Okay, well, the sun would be, and literally it was like we had one lamp that was the sun, and it had little tape markers on it for the different times. It's like, this shot is number 2. You know what I mean? And a lot went into that just to make it feel like the sun's getting brighter until the finale, till the climax of the whole thing.
Yeah,
So
I remember
there was
you
a
coming
lot
to
of
me
pieces.
in prep and being like, had taken a picture of your like hotel room wall, and we're like, it needs to be this when she first walks in, so that it was just some like reflection of like, through like,
Through glass, and then Matt put those glass pieces in that were kind of red and blue, so it gave us that kind of motif of and white light, so it was kind of like a little bit like an American flag. It was like, it had those colors in it, and it was like and then Matt built that window specifically so we could do that when she walks into the house.
right,
Like that's how we joined the real house to the set house. Actually, I remember now. Yeah, but all of that stuff is such a joy when everybody's kind of working to the same goal. We don't know exactly how to start it or where to, and then the pieces all start to come together, and then you're just like, yeah, this works, and everybody has their parameters. Then they have their rules, as you said.
right. Yeah. I just remember the day, that like the stunt people kind of came to us and were like, well, we think there should be a gun, and I was kind of like, I feel like there can't be guns, like that needs to be like a fist fight. It can't. And they're like, well, why would they run up there to jump off of that thing? And they're like, what if it's like, I think you were like, what if it's like a shotgun, so it's like only 2 shells? And I was like, oh, that's good, because then she has to reload. And then I was like, oh, and then what if like when she reloads, it gets pinched in her, like, you know, like let's turn it
No,
into,
that was
you know, so it's like
yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
kind of throwing it all together and making it all work together.
Yeah. And it's terrific to work with people like that, because Hank and Heidi were consistently creative with their ideas, approaches. What about this? What about that? And they were always excited and enthusiastic, which was brilliant, you know.
Right.
I think that's part of it. It's like having a crew like that is really important. You know? Yeah.
Well, I
Cool.
can't wait to make more things with you, Darren.
Yeah, same, Craig. Looking forward to it. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, including tomorrow.
Yeah. We're in a very noisy place tomorrow, but I'm sure we'll be fine. It's amazing looking. So, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for Chris, our sound guy, but he's going to be great.
We're going to be under an elevated train. Yeah, so it'll be loud.
Yes. Yeah, it'll be loud, but cool location. Very exciting to be working in New York and exploring a lot of New York that I've never seen. So for me, it's been really refreshing, you know, just like you get energy just from being in a place you've never been, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Are we going to pause it there or stop?
Yeah, let's thank you.
Yeah.
Atlanta. Hope that you guys have a great festival and
yeah, I hope this was okay for everybody.
Yeah, hope that we're interesting.
Yeah. Cool, Craig. Well,
Cool.
talk
All right.
to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
take care.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.